Every human being is constantly influencing and being influenced. From the moment you wake up to the moment you sleep, your thoughts, your decisions, your emotions are shaped by conversations, words, tone, and silent signals around you. Most people move through life without realizing this invisible force. They think they are fully in control, while in reality, their mind is being guided by others in subtle and powerful ways. Influence is not magic, and it is not manipulation alone. It is understanding how the human mind works, how emotions rise, how beliefs are formed, and how decisions are made. The person who understands this does not need to force anything. They simply guide the flow of conversation and energy in a way that naturally leads people toward a direction. Many people struggle in conversations. They feel ignored, misunderstood, or dominated. They say the right words at the wrong time, or the wrong words at the right time. They try to control outcomes, but fail because they do not understand the psychology behind human reactions. This creates frustration, self-doubt, and a feeling of powerlessness. But here is the reality. Conversations are not controlled by speaking more. They are controlled by understanding more. The strongest person in any interaction is not the loudest or the most aggressive. It is the one who can read emotions, sense hesitation, recognize hidden intentions, and respond with clarity and calmness. When you understand the mind, you begin to see patterns everywhere. You notice how people seek validation, how they fear rejection, how they protect their ego, and how they respond to confidence. You start to realize that most decisions are emotional first and logical later. This awareness gives you a quiet power that does not need to be announced. Influence is not about dominating others. True influence is about connection. It is about making people feel understood, valued, and safe, while guiding the conversation toward a meaningful outcome. When people trust you, they listen to you. When they feel respected, they open up. And when they feel understood, they are more willing to accept your ideas. This journey is not about becoming someone fake. It is about becoming more aware, more intentional, and more in control of your own thoughts and reactions. Before you can influence others, you must first understand yourself. Your emotions, your triggers, your habits, and your patterns. Because the way you speak, the way you react, and the way you carry yourself is constantly communicating something, even when you are silent. In this work, you will learn how conversations truly work. You will understand why people say yes, why they resist, why they agree, but do not act, and why some individuals naturally command attention without effort. You will learn how to remain calm under pressure, how to guide discussions without force, and how to recognize what people are really thinking even when they do not say it. This is not about tricks or shortcuts. It is about reality. Real human behavior, real emotional patterns, and real communication. When you begin to apply these principles, you will notice changes, not only in how others respond to you, but also in how you see the world. You will stop reacting blindly and start responding consciously. You will stop chasing approval and start creating respect. You will stop feeling controlled and start taking control of your own presence. This is the psychology of influence. And once you truly understand it, you will never see conversations this. Chapter 1. The reality of influence and the human mind. Influence is already happening, whether you are aware of it or not. Every conversation, every expression, every pause carries meaning. People do not respond only to words, they respond to feelings, tone, energy, and intention. This is the first truth you must accept. If you ignore it, you remain controlled by others. If you understand it, you begin to take control of your own presence. The human mind is not purely logical. It does not carefully analyze every situation before reacting. Most of the time, it reacts instantly based on past experiences, emotions, and hidden beliefs. This is why two people can hear the same sentence and feel completely different about it. The words are the same, but the internal world of each person is different. From childhood, the mind builds patterns. It learns what feels safe, what feels dangerous, what brings approval, and what brings rejection. These patterns become automatic responses. When someone speaks to you, your mind is not hearing them for the first time. It is comparing their words with your past. This is why influence is not about controlling others directly. It is about understanding these internal patterns and working with them. People want to feel important. This is one of the strongest psychological drivers. When someone feels ignored, they close themselves. When someone feels respected, they open up. Many people try to win conversations by proving they are right. In reality, they lose influence because they damage the other person's sense of importance. The mind protects the ego before it accepts logic. Another reality is that emotions move faster than thinking. Before a person understands what you said, they already feel something about it. That feeling decides whether they will listen or resist. If you create tension, they prepare to defend. If you create calm, they become receptive. This happens within seconds, and most people never notice it. Control in conversation does not mean domination. It means direction. It means guiding the emotional flow without force. A person who is calm, clear, and aware creates stability. Others naturally follow that stability because the mind seeks certainty. When you become steady, others begin to align with your presence without realizing it. Most people lose control because they react. They speak from emotion without understanding what is happening inside them. Anger, fear, insecurity, and ego take over. In that moment, they are not influencing the conversation, they are being controlled by it. The more reactive you are, the less influence you have. Understanding the human mind requires observation. You must learn to watch not only what people say, but how they say it. Their pauses, their tone, their body language, their eyes. Often what is not said carries more truth than what is spoken. When you notice these signals, you begin to understand the real conversation beneath the words. Silence is also part of influence. Many people are uncomfortable with silence, so they rush to fill it. This gives power to the person who remains calm and patient. Silence creates space, and in that space, people reveal more than they intended. A controlled mind does not rush. It allows the moment to unfold. Another important truth is that people believe what they feel, not what they hear. You can present perfect logic, but if the emotional experience is negative, it will be rejected. On the other hand, even weak logic can be accepted if the emotional experience is strong and positive. This is why connection is more powerful than argument. Influence also begins from within. If you do not believe in yourself, your words lose strength. The mind of the other person senses hesitation, even if you try to hide it. Confidence is not loudness, it is clarity and certainty. When you are clear within yourself, your communication becomes naturally powerful. Example 1. A person enters a meeting feeling insecure. Even though they prepared well, their voice shakes slightly, and they avoid eye contact. Others in the room sense uncertainty, and begin to question their ideas even before fully hearing them. The content was strong, but the internal state weakened the influence. Example 2. Another person speaks calmly and slowly. They do not rush to prove anything. They listen carefully and respond with clarity. Even when challenged, they remain composed. The room begins to trust them, not because they are forcing authority, but because their presence feels stable and certain. This creates natural influence. The reality is simple, but not easy. People are not controlled by words alone. They are guided by emotions, patterns, and perception. When you understand this, you stop trying to win conversations through force. You start shaping them through awareness. This chapter is your foundation. Before you learn techniques, you must accept the truth. Influence begins in the mind, not in the mouth. When you understand the mind, you understand people. And when you understand people, you begin to control the direction of Chapter 2. Emotions control decisions, not logic. Most people believe that decisions are made through thinking. They assume that if they explain clearly and present strong reasons, others will agree with them. This belief sounds logical, but it is not real. The truth is that emotions decide first, and logic comes later to justify that decision. The human mind is designed for survival, not perfection. It reacts quickly to protect itself from discomfort, rejection, and uncertainty. When a person hears something, the emotional brain responds immediately. It asks one simple question: does this feel safe or not? Based on that feeling, the person either opens up or closes down. This is why arguments often fail. Two people present facts, but neither changes their mind. The reason is simple. Their emotions are already involved. Once the emotion is activated, the mind begins defending instead of understanding. Logic becomes a tool to protect the existing belief, not to discover truth. If you want to influence a conversation, you must first understand the emotional state of the other person. Are they calm or tense? Are they confident or insecure? Are they open or defensive? These emotional positions decide how they will respond to everything you say. People rarely say what they truly feel. They may appear calm, but inside they are anxious. They may speak strongly, but inside they feel uncertain. If you only listen to words, you miss the real conversation. Influence grows when you learn to sense emotion beyond language. Another important reality is that people want to avoid pain more than they want to gain benefit. Fear of loss is stronger than desire for gain. If something feels risky, the mind resists even if the logic is perfect. If something feels safe, the mind accepts even if the logic is weak. This explains why tone matters more than content. A harsh tone creates resistance, even if the message is correct. A calm tone creates acceptance, even if the message is challenging. The emotional experience shapes the response before the brain even processes meaning. When you speak, you are not just sharing information. You are creating an emotional environment. If that environment feels safe, people relax. When they relax, they listen. When they listen, they begin to consider your ideas. This is the pathway of influence. Trying to control someone through pressure usually creates the opposite result. The human mind resists force. It wants to feel free, even when it is being guided. This means influence is not about pushing harder. It is about reducing resistance. To reduce resistance, you must first control your own emotions. If you are frustrated, it will appear in your voice. If you are desperate, it will appear in your behavior. The other person senses this and becomes cautious. Emotional control is not suppression. It is awareness and stability. Clarity is also important. When you are clear in your intention, your message becomes simple. Confusion creates discomfort, and discomfort creates rejection. People follow what they understand easily. Simplicity makes influence stronger. You must also understand timing. Even the right message fails at the wrong time. If someone is already stressed, they cannot process new ideas properly. Trying to influence them in that moment increases resistance. Patience is part of control. Knowing when to speak is as important as knowing what to say. Influence is also built through consistency. If your emotions change rapidly, people cannot trust your direction. Stability creates confidence. When others feel that you are steady, they become more open to your guidance. Example 1. A manager presents a new plan to a team in a rushed and pressured way. His tone is sharp and impatient. Even though the plan is good, the team feels stressed and controlled. They begin to resist and find problems in the idea. The emotional environment blocks acceptance. Example 2. Another manager presents a similar plan, but first creates a calm environment. He listens to concerns and speaks clearly without pressure. The team feels respected and relaxed. They begin to support the idea, not because it is different, but because the emotional experience is different. The lesson is direct. You are not influencing minds through logic alone. You are influencing emotions first. When emotions align, logic follows naturally. If you ignore emotions, you will struggle in every conversation. If you understand emotions, you will guide conversations without force. This is the hidden layer of communication that most people never see. Control your emotional presence, understand the emotional state of others, and create the right feeling in the moment. When you do this, you do not need to convince people aggressively. They begin to move in your direction naturally. This is the power of emotional influence. Chapter 3. The power of listening and silent control. Most people think influence comes from speaking well. They try to use the right words, the right arguments, and the right explanations. But the deeper truth is different. Real influence begins with listening. Not ordinary listening, but focused and aware listening. When you truly listen, you begin to understand the structure of the other person's mind. You notice what matters to them, what they fear, what they avoid, and what they are trying to protect. This information is more powerful than any clever sentence. Without it, you are speaking blindly. People are constantly revealing themselves, not only through words, but through tone, pauses, hesitation, and repetition. When someone repeats a point, it means it is important to them. When someone hesitates, it means there is doubt or fear. When someone changes tone, it means emotion is involved. These signals are always present, but most people miss them because they are too focused on what they want to say next. Listening creates control in a quiet way. When a person feels heard, they begin to relax. Their guard lowers. They become more open and less defensive. This gives you space to guide the conversation without resistance. The more they speak, the more they reveal, and the more clearly you can respond. Silence is a powerful part of listening. Most people fear silence, so they rush to fill it. This is where control is lost. When you remain comfortable in silence, the other person often continues speaking. They explain more than they planned. They reveal deeper thoughts. Silence becomes a tool that allows truth to surface. Control through listening does not mean staying passive. It means choosing your moments carefully. Instead of reacting instantly, you observe first. You let the conversation unfold. Then when you speak, your words carry more precision because they are based on understanding, not assumption. Another important aspect is emotional listening. This means you listen not only to the content, but to the feeling behind it. Two people can say the same sentence, but feel completely different. If you respond only to the words, you may miss the real message. When you respond to the emotion, the person feels understood. Interrupting breaks influence. It signals that you value your own thoughts more than theirs. Even if your intention is good, it creates subtle resistance. Letting someone finish shows respect and patience. This strengthens your position without saying anything directly. People trust those who listen. Trust is the foundation of influence. Without trust, even strong arguments fail. With trust, even simple suggestions are accepted. Listening builds this trust naturally because it shows that you are not trying to dominate the conversation. Another hidden power of listening is that it slows you down. When you slow down, you reduce emotional reactions. You think more clearly. You avoid saying things that weaken your position. This creates stability in your communication. Listening also helps you identify patterns. Some people seek validation. Some seek control. Some avoid responsibility. When you recognize these patterns, you can adjust your approach. You stop using the same method for everyone and begin to communicate with precision. There is also strength in asking the right questions. Questions guide thinking without force. Instead of telling someone they are wrong, you can ask a question that makes them reconsider. This feels natural and non-threatening. The person reaches the conclusion themselves, which makes it stronger. However, listening must be genuine. If you pretend to listen while waiting to speak, people sense it. Your attention becomes divided, and your responses lose depth. Real listening requires presence. It requires that you focus fully on the moment. Example 1. Two friends are in a discussion. One keeps interrupting and trying to prove his point. The other remains quiet and listens carefully. As the conversation continues, the first person becomes frustrated while the second gains a clear understanding of his thoughts. When the second finally speaks, he addresses the exact concerns directly. The conversation shifts because his response is precise and calm. Example 2. In a workplace conversation, an employee explains a problem. The manager listens without interruption and asks a few simple questions. The employee feels understood and continues to share more details. By the end, the manager has a full picture and suggests a solution that fits perfectly. The employee accepts it easily because he feels heard. The lesson is clear. Talking more does not give you control. Understanding more does. Listening is not weakness. It is a strategic strength. When you master listening, you no longer chase the conversation. You guide it from a place of awareness. You respond instead of react. You create space instead of pressure. This is silent control. It is not loud or visible, but it is powerful. The person who listens deeply speaks less, but Chapter 4. Perception creates reality in conversations. What people hear is not always what you say. What they understand is shaped by their perception. This is one of the most powerful and dangerous truths in communication. You may speak clearly with good intention, but the other person may still misunderstand you. Not because your words are wrong, but because their perception is different. The human mind does not see reality directly. It filters everything through beliefs, past experiences, emotions, and expectations. This filter creates a personal version of reality. Two people can experience the same conversation, but walk away with completely different meanings. Each believes they are right, because each trusts their own perception. This is why influence is not about delivering a perfect message. It is about understanding how that message will be received. If you ignore perception, you lose control. If you understand it, you begin to shape how your words are interpreted. First impressions play a major role in perception. Before you speak, people already form opinions about you. Your posture, your tone, your confidence, your energy, all create an image in their mind. Once that image is formed, everything you say is filtered through it. If the perception is positive, your words gain strength. If the perception is negative, your words lose impact. Changing perception is difficult once it is fixed. The mind prefers consistency. It resists information that contradicts its current belief. This means if someone sees you as weak, they may ignore your strong points. If they see you as confident, they may overlook small mistakes. Perception shapes attention. This is why consistency matters. When your behavior aligns with your message, people begin to trust the image they have of you. When your behavior is inconsistent, confusion appears. Confusion weakens influence because the mind cannot decide what to believe. Another important factor is labeling. The words people use to describe a situation change how they feel about it. Calling something a problem creates tension. Calling it a challenge creates motivation. The situation may be the same, but the perception changes the emotional response. You can guide perception by choosing your words carefully. Simple changes in language can shift how people interpret your message. Instead of forcing agreement, you frame the idea in a way that feels natural and acceptable. Perception is also influenced by expectations. If someone expects negativity, they look for it. If they expect respect, they notice it. This means your past interactions with a person affect every future conversation. Influence is built over time, not in a single moment. Another reality is that people trust what they see more than what they hear. Your actions, your expressions, and your reactions speak continuously. If your words say one thing, but your behavior shows another, people follow the behavior. This is why self-awareness is essential. You are always communicating, even when silent. Emotions also distort perception. When a person is angry, they interpret neutral words as attacks. When a person is happy, they interpret the same words as harmless. This means timing and emotional awareness are critical. You must recognize when perception is being influenced by emotion and adjust your approach. You cannot control how everyone sees you, but you can influence it. By being clear, calm, and consistent, you create a stable image. Over time, this image becomes your identity in the minds of others. Once that identity is strong, your influence becomes easier because people already expect certain behavior from you. It is also important to understand your own perception. You may believe someone is against you when they are simply confused. You may assume disrespect when there is none. If your perception is wrong, your reactions will be wrong. Self-awareness protects you from misinterpreting situations. Example 1. A person gives feedback to a colleague in a direct tone. The intention is to help, but the colleague perceives it as criticism. Because of this perception, the colleague becomes defensive and rejects the feedback. The words were not the problem, the perception was. Example 2. Another person gives similar feedback, but begins with a calm and respectful approach. The tone is supportive, and the intention is clear. The colleague perceives it as guidance and becomes open to improvement. The message is accepted because the perception is positive. The lesson is simple. Reality in conversations is not fixed. It is created in the mind of each person. If you ignore perception, you create confusion. If you understand perception, you create clarity. Influence grows when you align your message with how people think and feel. You do not just speak, you shape meaning. You do not just present ideas, you guide interpretation. When you master perception, you stop being misunderstood and start being understood in the way you intend. This is a powerful step. Chapter 5. Confidence and presence control the conversation. Before you say a single word, people already feel something about you. This feeling comes from your presence. Presence is not about appearance alone. It is the combination of your posture, your eye contact, your tone, your pace, and your internal state. It is how you carry yourself in a moment. This silent signal often decides who leads the conversation. Confidence is the core of presence. But confidence is often misunderstood. It is not loudness or aggression. It is not trying to prove that you are better than others. True confidence is quiet certainty. It is the feeling that you are stable within yourself, regardless of the situation. When you are confident, your words become clear. You do not rush. You do not over-explain. You do not seek constant approval. This creates a natural authority. People trust what feels stable. When they sense that you are grounded, they become more willing to follow your direction. Lack of confidence shows in subtle ways. Speaking too fast, avoiding eye contact, changing your tone frequently, or trying too hard to impress. These signals create doubt in the minds of others. Even if your ideas are strong, your delivery weakens them. The mind of the listener begins to question you before fully understanding your message. Presence is built from internal control. If your thoughts are scattered, your communication becomes scattered. If your emotions are unstable, your behavior reflects it. This is why influence begins within. You cannot create a strong external presence without internal clarity. Another important aspect of presence is stillness. People who move constantly or speak without pause appear uncertain. Stillness creates power. When you pause before speaking, it shows that you are thinking, not reacting. When you move with control, it shows that you are aware, not nervous. Eye contact is also a key part of presence. It shows attention and confidence. Avoiding eye contact can signal insecurity or discomfort. But strong eye contact does not mean staring aggressively. It means being relaxed and steady. This balance creates connection without pressure. Your tone of voice carries more weight than your words. A calm and steady tone builds trust. A shaky or inconsistent tone creates doubt. When your tone matches your message, people feel alignment. This alignment strengthens influence. Another reality is that people follow certainty. When you speak with clarity and direction, others feel guided. When you hesitate or contradict yourself, confusion appears. Confusion breaks influence because the mind looks for stability. Confidence also affects how you handle pressure. In difficult conversations, most people react emotionally. They raise their voice, defend themselves, or become silent. A confident person remains composed. This composure shifts the balance of the conversation. The one who stays calm often gains control. Presence is not something you switch on for a moment. It is developed through awareness and practice. You must observe yourself in conversations. Notice your habits, your reactions, and your patterns. Slowly, you begin to adjust them. Over time, your presence becomes natural and consistent. Another important truth is that confidence grows from action, not waiting. Many people think they need to feel confident before they act. In reality, confidence develops after repeated action. Each time you handle a situation with control, your mind learns that you are capable. This builds internal certainty. You must also accept that not everyone will agree with you. Trying to please everyone weakens your presence. Confidence includes the ability to stand by your thoughts without becoming defensive. It is balance between openness and self-assurance. Example 1. A person presents an idea in a meeting, but keeps adjusting their words and apologizing. Their voice lacks steadiness, and they avoid direct eye contact. Others begin to lose interest and question the idea. The lack of presence weakens the message. Example 2. Another person presents a similar idea, but speaks slowly and clearly. They maintain calm eye contact and pause when needed. Even when questioned, they respond without rushing. The room pays attention and respects their input. The presence strengthens the same type of idea. The lesson is clear. Words alone do not control conversations. The way you deliver them shapes how they are received. When your presence is strong, you do not need to force attention. It comes naturally. When your confidence is stable, you do not need to convince aggressively. People begin to trust your direction. This is the power of presence. It is silent but visible. It is calm but strong. And once developed, it becomes one of the most effective. Chapter 6. Understanding Ego and Human Behavior. Every conversation is not just an exchange of words. It is also an interaction between egos. The ego is the part of the mind that wants to feel important, respected, and right. It protects identity and self-image. If you do not understand ego, you will struggle to influence people, because most resistance in conversations comes from ego, not logic. People do not like to feel wrong. Even when they are wrong, they resist accepting it directly. The reason is not always arrogance. It is protection. Accepting that they are wrong can feel like losing status or value. The mind tries to avoid this feeling by defending itself. This is why direct confrontation often creates conflict instead of understanding. If you attack someone's ego, they stop listening. Their focus shifts from the topic to self-defense. They begin to justify their position, argue more strongly, or shut down completely. In that moment, influence is lost because the conversation becomes a battle, not a connection. To control conversations, you must learn to protect the other person's ego while guiding them. This does not mean you agree with everything. It means you communicate in a way that allows them to keep their sense of dignity. When people feel respected, they are more open to change. One effective approach is to avoid absolute statements. Words like always and never create pressure. They make the other person feel judged. Instead, using balanced language reduces resistance. It creates space for discussion rather than forcing a position. Another important point is giving people ownership of ideas. When someone feels that a decision is partly theirs, they support it more strongly. If they feel forced, they resist even if the idea is good. Influence grows when people feel involved, not controlled. Ego is also connected to status. In every interaction, there is a subtle sense of position. Who is leading, who is following, who is being respected. This is not always visible, but it is always present. If someone feels that their status is being lowered, they react. If they feel valued, they cooperate. Respect is one of the strongest ways to manage ego. Simple actions like listening fully, acknowledging points, and responding calmly show respect. These actions do not weaken you. They strengthen your position because they reduce resistance and build trust. You must also manage your own ego. This is often the hardest part. When someone challenges you, your ego wants to respond quickly and strongly. It wants to prove that you are right. But this reaction can damage the conversation. Control comes from awareness. When you notice your ego rising, you pause instead of reacting. Letting go of the need to always be right increases your influence. It allows you to focus on the outcome instead of the argument. Sometimes allowing a small point to pass helps you guide the larger direction. This is not weakness. It is strategic control. Another reality is that people respect those who remain calm under pressure. When emotions rise and you stay steady, it shows strength. The other person begins to adjust because your stability contrasts with their reaction. This shifts the dynamic without direct confrontation. Praise also plays a role in managing ego. Genuine appreciation opens people. It makes them feel seen and valued. However, it must be real. False praise is easily detected and reduces trust. When appreciation is honest, it creates a positive environment for influence. It is also important to understand that ego can make people hide their true thoughts. They may agree on the surface, but disagree internally. If you only rely on their words, you may misunderstand the situation. Observing behavior and tone helps you see beyond the surface. Example 1. A person tells a colleague directly that their work is wrong and poorly done. The colleague feels attacked and becomes defensive. Instead of improving, they begin to argue and justify their actions. The conversation turns into conflict because the ego was challenged. Example 2. Another person addresses a similar issue but begins by acknowledging the effort. Then they calmly point out areas that can be improved and ask for the colleague's thoughts. The colleague feels respected and becomes open to discussion. Improvement happens because the ego is protected. The lesson is clear. Ego is always present even when it is not visible. If you ignore it, you create resistance. If you understand it, you create cooperation. Influence is not about breaking someone's ego. It is about working with it. When people feel respected, they listen. When they listen, they consider. And when they consider, they are more likely to move in your direction. Mastering ego management allows you to guide conversations smoothly without conflict. It turns resistance into openness and tension into understanding. This is a key step in controlling conversations and understanding the deeper behavior. Chapter 7. The Art of Asking and Guiding Without Force. Most people try to influence by telling. They explain, they argue, they push their ideas forward. But direct telling often creates resistance. The human mind does not like being controlled. It wants to feel independent even when it is being guided. This is why asking is more powerful than telling. Questions open the mind, while statements often close it. When you tell someone what to think, they compare it with their existing belief. If it does not match, they resist. But when you ask a question, you invite them to think. The answer comes from within their own mind, which makes it stronger and more acceptable to them. Asking the right question is a form of control. It directs attention. It shapes the path of thinking. Without forcing anything, you guide the conversation step by step. The other person feels involved and respected while you are quietly leading the direction. Good questions are simple and clear. Complicated questions create confusion. Confusion weakens influence because the mind avoids effort. When your question is easy to understand, the person responds naturally and continues the flow of conversation. Another important aspect is timing. Asking a question at the right moment creates impact. If you ask too early, the person may not be ready. If you ask too late, the moment is lost. Awareness helps you recognize when the mind of the other person is open and ready to think. Open questions are more powerful than closed ones. Questions that can be answered with yes or no limit the conversation. Questions that invite explanation create depth. They allow the person to express thoughts and reveal more information. This gives you a clearer understanding and more control. You must also listen carefully to the answers. The purpose of asking is not just to speak, but to understand. Each answer gives you clues about beliefs, emotions, and intentions. These clues help you decide your next step in the conversation. Another technique is guiding through sequence. Instead of asking one strong question, you ask a series of small questions. Each question moves the person slightly in a direction. By the end, they reach a conclusion that feels natural to them. This is smooth influence without pressure. Avoid asking questions that feel like interrogation. Tone matters. If your tone feels aggressive or judgmental, the person becomes defensive. Your questions should feel calm and curious. This creates comfort and openness. You can also use questions to reduce resistance. Instead of correcting someone directly, you can ask a question that makes them reconsider. This approach protects their ego and allows them to adjust their thinking without feeling forced. Another powerful use of questions is to create awareness. Sometimes people are not conscious of their own behavior or decisions. A simple question can make them pause and reflect. This moment of awareness is where change begins. Guiding without force requires patience. You cannot rush the process. When you push too quickly, the mind resists. When you move step by step, the mind follows. Influence becomes smooth and natural. It is also important to remain neutral in your reactions. If you react strongly to an answer, the person may change their response to please you or avoid conflict. Neutrality encourages honesty, which gives you better understanding. Confidence still plays a role here. When you ask questions with calm certainty, people take them seriously. If you appear unsure, your questions lose impact. Presence supports the power of your words, even when you are asking instead of telling. Example 1. A person tries to convince a friend to change a decision by giving direct advice. The friend resists and defends their choice. The conversation becomes tense because the advice feels like pressure. Example 2. Another person approaches the same situation by asking simple questions. What made you choose this option, and how do you see it working in the long term? The friend begins to think deeper and notices gaps in their own reasoning. They adjust their decision without feeling forced because the realization came from within. The lesson is clear. Influence is not always about speaking more. It is about guiding thinking. When you ask with purpose, you lead without pushing. When you guide without force, people move willingly. This creates stronger and more lasting influence. Mastering the art of asking transforms your conversations. You stop chasing agreement and start creating understanding. You stop forcing direction and start shaping it quietly. This is intelligent control. Subtle but powerful and deeply effective in understanding and influencing. Chapter 8. Handling resistance and turning it into cooperation. Resistance is a natural part of every conversation. It is not a problem to eliminate, but a signal to understand. When someone resists, it means something inside them is not aligned. It could be fear, doubt, confusion, or protection of ego. If you treat resistance as opposition, you create conflict. If you treat it as information, you gain control. Most people react to resistance emotionally. They push hard or repeat their point, or become frustrated. This only increases the resistance. The human mind responds to pressure by defending itself. The more you push, the more it pulls away. This creates a cycle where both sides try to win, but no one truly influences. The first step in handling resistance is to stay calm. Your reaction decides the direction of the conversation. If you remain steady, you create stability. If you react, you lose control. Calmness is not weakness. It is strength, because it allows you to think clearly while others may be reacting. You must also listen to the resistance instead of ignoring it. Behind every objection, there is a reason. When you understand that reason, you can address it directly. If you ignore it and continue speaking, the person feels unheard and becomes more resistant. Acknowledging the other person's point reduces tension. This does not mean you agree with everything. It means you recognize their perspective. Simple acknowledgement makes people feel respected. When they feel respected, their resistance begins to soften. Another important approach is to slow down. Resistance often increases when conversations move too fast. The person feels overwhelmed or pressured. Slowing down gives them space to process. This reduces anxiety and allows them to think more clearly. You should also avoid turning resistance into a personal issue. When you take it personally, your ego becomes involved. This shifts your focus from understanding to defending. Keep your attention on the situation, not on your pride. This keeps the conversation productive. Reframing is a powerful tool in handling resistance. Sometimes people resist because they see the situation in a certain way. By changing the perspective, you change their response. This is not manipulation. It is presenting the same idea in a way that feels more acceptable. Another key is flexibility. If one approach is not working, do not repeat it again and again. Adjust your method. Influence requires adaptation. The same strategy does not work for every person or every situation. Patience is essential. Some resistance cannot be removed instantly. Trying to force quick agreement creates more tension. Allow time for the person to process and reflect. Often the strongest influence happens after the conversation ends, when the person thinks on their own. It is also useful to separate emotion from content. Sometimes resistance is emotional, not logical. If you try to solve it with logic alone, it will not work. First address the emotional state, then move to the content. This sequence makes your message more effective. Confidence helps here as well. When you remain composed during resistance, it shows that you are not shaken. This creates a subtle shift. The other person begins to adjust because your stability contrasts with their resistance. You must also recognize when to pause or step back. Not every moment is right for influence. If the resistance is too strong, continuing may damage the relationship. Stepping back shows control and awareness. You can return to the conversation later with a better approach. Example 1. A person faces resistance during a discussion and responds by raising their voice and repeating their argument. The other person becomes more defensive, and the conversation turns into conflict. The resistance grows because it is met with pressure. Example 2. Another person faces similar resistance but remains calm and listens carefully. They acknowledge the concern and ask a simple question to understand it better. The tension reduces, and the other person begins to explain their position more openly. This creates an opportunity to guide the conversation toward agreement. The lesson is direct. Resistance is not the end of influence. It is the beginning of deeper understanding. When you handle resistance with calmness and awareness, you turn it into cooperation. You move from conflict to connection. You guide instead of force. This ability separates those who struggle in conversations from those who control them. Because true influence is not shown when everything is easy. It is proven when challenges appear. Mastering resistance gives you the power to stay in control even in difficult situations. And that is where real influence is built. Chapter 9. Reading people and understanding hidden intentions. Every conversation has layers. The words spoken are only the surface. Beneath them lie thoughts, feelings, fears, and intentions. If you want to influence effectively, you must learn to read these hidden layers. Most people react to words alone, missing the deeper currents that drive behavior. Understanding hidden intentions gives you a decisive advantage. The first step is observation. People reveal more through actions than speech. Tone, body language, facial expressions, and energy provide clues. A pause before a response often signals hesitation or conflict. A change in posture can indicate discomfort or resistance. Eyes are especially revealing. They often betray what words conceal. Listening closely is also crucial. Not just hearing the words, but noticing emphasis, repetition, and patterns. People unconsciously reveal priorities through what they focus on. If a point is repeated or defended strongly, it is important to them. If a topic is avoided or minimized, it may carry fear or discomfort. These are signals of hidden intentions. Another key factor is context. Behavior cannot be interpreted in isolation. Consider the environment, past interactions, and relationships. A person who appears defensive may be under external stress unrelated to the conversation. Understanding context prevents misjudgment and ensures that your influence is effective rather than counterproductive. Empathy strengthens this ability. When you try to feel what another person feels, you pick up subtle cues that would otherwise be missed. Empathy allows you to anticipate reactions, recognize unspoken needs, and adapt your communication accordingly. The more accurately you sense another's emotional state, the more precise your guidance can be. Patterns in behavior reveal deeper truths. Some people seek approval, some seek control, and some fear judgment. Recognizing these patterns helps you adjust your strategy. For example, a person who fears criticism may respond better to questions that give them a sense of choice rather than direct statements. A person seeking control may align better when they feel involved in decision-making. Nonverbal communication is often more reliable than verbal. People sometimes say what they believe is expected rather than what they truly feel. Micro-expressions, subtle gestures, and tone fluctuations reveal genuine emotions. Reading these allows you to respond in a way that aligns with their true state, increasing influence without confrontation. You also need to be aware of your own signals. Your body language, tone, and expressions communicate even when you are silent. If your energy shows impatience or tension, people sense it and resist. A calm, confident, and attentive presence encourages openness and honesty. Another tool is reflective listening. By restating what you sense the other person feels, you validate their emotions. This does not mean agreeing with everything, but showing that you understand. Validation reduces defensiveness and allows the other person to engage more freely. Example 1. During a negotiation, A colleague repeatedly shifts in their chair and avoids eye contact while saying they are fine with the proposal. Observing these cues, the negotiator senses hidden hesitation and asks exploratory questions. The colleague reveals concerns that would have caused future conflict if left unaddressed, allowing for adjustments and agreement. Example 2. In a team discussion, a member speaks confidently about a plan, but frequently glances at their manager and hesitates on certain points. By noticing these subtle signals, the facilitator recognizes hidden doubt and guides the conversation to address these concerns. The outcome is stronger because unspoken objections are addressed before they become obstacles. The lesson is clear. Influence is not achieved through words alone. It is achieved by understanding what drives people beneath the surface. By observing, listening, and empathizing, you uncover hidden intentions and guide conversations with precision. When you read people accurately, you anticipate reactions instead of reacting blindly. You address the real issues instead of surface symptoms. You guide conversations smoothly and naturally. This is a powerful skill that transforms ordinary interaction into strategic influence. Mastering hidden intentions gives you insight and control without force. It is the difference between speaking at people and guide. Chapter 10. Framing conversations to influence thought. Every word, every story, and every example you use shapes perception. How you present information, how you frame it, determines whether people accept it or resist it. Framing is not about lying or manipulation. It is about presenting reality in a way that aligns with the listener's perspective and emotions. Done well, it makes influence natural and effortless. The human mind interprets information relative to context. The same idea can feel threatening or appealing depending on how it is framed. If you emphasize loss or failure, people focus on fear. If you emphasize gain or opportunity, people focus on potential. The underlying situation may be identical, but perception changes based on framing. Framing works best when it aligns with emotions. People make decisions emotionally first and justify them logically later. If your framing triggers the right emotional response, your words are accepted more easily. For example, presenting a new project as a chance to grow and achieve success engages curiosity and motivation. Presenting it as a mandatory obligation triggers resistance and defensiveness. Storytelling is a powerful tool in framing. Humans process stories more naturally than abstract facts. When you wrap a lesson or message in a story, people relate and feel the emotions of the characters. This creates connection and subtly guides thought without overt pressure. The story becomes a vehicle for influence rather than a lecture. Choice is another element of framing. People feel empowered when they perceive options. Even if the choices are guided, giving them a sense of control increases acceptance. For example, instead of saying, "You must do this," framing it as which approach feels best to you to achieve this goal encourages engagement while still directing the conversation. Questions can also frame thought. Instead of giving answers immediately, asking the right questions frames the issue in a way that guides the person to consider your perspective. This method creates internal ownership of the conclusion, making it stronger and more lasting. Language matters. Words carry emotional weight. Using positive, constructive language, frame situations as opportunities rather than threats. Avoid negative absolutes and judgmental words. Subtle shifts in phrasing can transform resistance into openness. Timing enhances framing. Introducing ideas when the person is relaxed, receptive, or curious increases effectiveness. Forcing ideas during stress or distraction reduces impact. Influence requires awareness of when the mind is ready to receive new perspectives. Observation strengthens framing. Pay attention to verbal and nonverbal cues. Notice hesitations, repeated concerns, and areas of excitement. Tailor your framing to emphasize what resonates and address what creates tension. This alignment ensures your message is understood in the way you intend. Example 1. A manager presents a new initiative as a challenge that could risk current stability. Employees react with concern and resistance. By reframing the initiative as an opportunity to innovate and gain recognition, the same plan is received with curiosity and motivation. The outcome shifts because the framing aligned with emotional perception. Example 2. During a personal conversation, a friend is reluctant to adopt a healthier routine because they see it as restrictive. By framing the change as a way to gain energy and confidence rather than giving up pleasures, the friend becomes open to trying it. The perception of benefit replaces resistance. The lesson is direct. Influence is shaped by how you present ideas, not just what you present. When framing is aligned with emotions, context, and perception, people naturally consider and accept your message. Mastering framing allows you to guide thought without confrontation. You shape understanding, highlight possibilities, and reduce resistance. The conversation becomes a pathway rather than a battleground, and influence becomes effortless because the mind feels it is discovering the truth on its own. This chapter emphasizes that influence is an art as much as a science. Words, tone, timing, and structure all work together. Conclusion: mastering influence and understanding the mind. Influence is not about force, pressure, or manipulation. It is about understanding, awareness, and alignment. Every conversation is shaped by emotions, perceptions, intentions, and presence. Words alone rarely determine outcomes. It is the deeper currents of thought, feeling, and ego that guide responses. Recognizing this reality is the first step toward true mastery. Throughout this journey, you have seen that control begins within. Your emotional state, confidence, and clarity shape the energy you bring into every interaction. When you are steady and intentional, others naturally follow. Awareness of your own mind allows you to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, creating a space where influence flows naturally. Listening and observation are the tools of influence. By paying attention to tone, body language, pauses, and hesitation, you gain insight into hidden intentions and emotional states. Silent control, calm presence, and empathetic understanding are often more powerful than speaking loudly or forcefully. Influence is earned through understanding, not demanded through authority. Emotions drive decisions more than logic. People accept ideas when their emotional experience aligns with the message. Framing, questioning, and timing are strategies to guide thought without creating resistance. Protecting ego, validating perspectives, and offering choice allow cooperation rather than conflict. Influence thrives when people feel respected, understood, and safe. Every chapter emphasizes one central truth. Influence is relational, not transactional. It is about connecting with minds and hearts, not overpowering them. The most effective influence is subtle, patient, and aware. It is the art of guiding without forcing, shaping perception without deception, and creating outcomes that feel natural to everyone involved. When you understand perception, emotion, and ego, you no longer struggle to be heard or understood. You anticipate reactions, navigate resistance, and create alignment. You stop chasing control and start embodying it. Conversations become opportunities. Disagreements become pathways to understanding. And every interaction becomes a chance to guide with clarity and integrity. Influence is not a set of tricks. It is a mindset, a practice, and a skill that grows with awareness and experience. The human mind is complex, but it follows consistent patterns once you learn to observe and interpret them. By mastering these principles, you gain not only the ability to guide conversations, but also a deeper understanding of people, relationships, and yourself. Ultimately, true influence is a reflection of mastery over your own mind and awareness of others. It is calm yet powerful, subtle yet transformative. When you apply these lessons consistently, you move from reacting to guiding, from being misunderstood to being influential, and from navigating conversations blindly to shaping them consciously. This is the essence of the psychology of influence. Understanding it, practicing it, and living it transforms not only how others respond to you, but how you experience the world. Conversations cease to be battles and become opportunities. Influence becomes natural, effective, and enduring. You now have the tools, the awareness, and the mindset to step into this power. Every interaction is a chance to practice, observe, and grow. When you combine understanding, presence, and empathy, you do not just communicate, you guide, inspire, and influence with integrity and impact the end.
Kindly subscribe to my channel.